Okay, we're live. Okay, hi everyone in the chat. So welcome to a very special Fall for Joanna Shupe chat. My name's Dana.
And I am Kelly, and all season long on Instagram, Dana and I have been reading and discussing Joanna Shupe's Knickerbocker Club series. Can you see these? There we go. With an incredible and insightful group of readers called the Knicker Babes, and we are so excited to have Gilded Age royalty, Joanna Shupe, here with us today. Welcome, Joanna. Thank you so much for joining us.
You guys, this is such a thrill. Thank you. And I'm so honored. So this is a thrill. Thank you so much.
So it's been really, really amazing. So thank you, Joanna, for not only joining us today, but for giving us these wonderful stories to escape into. Kelly and I have been compiling our burning questions for Joanna, and then we've asked questions from the Knicker Babes. So we'll also be saving time at the end of the hour for any questions coming in from those watching. So save your questions. We'll be able to pull them onto the screen at the end. So I don't want any of them to get lost.
Yes, we'll give you a heads up about that. And yeah, we have a lot to get through, so let's dive right in.
Yay, I'm excited.
So season, we read through Sarah MacLean's backlist, and when we interviewed her, she was like, I was so nervous, like hearing that a whole group of readers are reading my backlist books.
Very, very nervous.
You felt the same way?
Yeah, because you never know, society changes so fast, tastes, and we've become so much more progressive, and my first book was published in 2015, but I wrote it in 2011. So wow. I mean, you learn as you write, and as we all evolve as a genre and as a society and everything. So it's a little like oh no, I hope I did okay.
Right. Well, and I do think romance readers are like so aware of that, like we've had so many discussions across these read-alongs as a group where it's like, oh, what year do we think this was written in compared to like what we're familiar with of that author's later work. And you can see those differences, but I think on the whole, readers tend to understand that romance moves very fast and life moves very fast. And
yes. Yeah. And, a lot of the books that, my mom still maintains that one of her favorites is, Sweet Savage Love. And I'm like, Mom, we've moved on from that. Like that was so long ago. Like you're not allowed to do that anymore.
Oh, we all have our weak spots.
Right. I'm like, you've got to like
faves.
Push that one off to the side. Never admit that again.
Right.
And it's good that everyone has their own taste too. So yes. Different books in the series hit different people for different things. Like we have our Emmett Kavanaugh fangirls in the group, but then we're definitely Will Sloan girls at heart. So, there's a book for everyone.
There is.
That's true. And it's, it's funny because, people will often say like, oh, such and such is my favorite book. And I'll be like, oh, really? Are you sure?
That one?
Oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, that's what you try to remind yourself as a writer, because so often I'll be sitting at my computer and I'll just think like, this is the worst thing I've ever written. It's totally boring. No one's gonna like it. It doesn't have the same whatever as X book. Like I'll think it's not as steamy as this book, or doesn't have the dialogue from this book. And then you have to remind yourself that, not every book works for every reader, and everybody, you kind of have to like talk yourself down from the ledge sometimes about like reminding yourself that yes, it's true. Not every book is going to work for everybody, and that's okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, so the three of us were talking before we all joined you live about kind of the differences between Regency and the Gilded Age. And a lot of the group members wanted to know what drew you to the Gilded Age and like what keeps you there.
So, okay. This is going to be crazy coming from a romance writer, but I did not read Jane Austen as a child, as a teen. I didn't read Jane Austen until my 30s, and I didn't see the movies until I probably saw the movies first, to be honest, and then I picked up one of the books. I just was not one of those Austenites, as a teen. I read Edith Wharton, and that for me was, I mean, first of all, I loved Age of Innocence because it didn't have a happy ending. And I think I like sobbed my eyeballs out as like a, whatever, 14-year-old. And that for me was such a pivotal book because, the old New York, I have relatives that came through Ellis Island. So I've always felt like this connection to the late 19th century and Ellis Island and New York. I grew up in Ohio, but I had family in Brooklyn. And so we came and, we stayed and we visited and we did the city and, back when you could get up in the Torch of, out in Liberty Island. So I have always felt like a connection to old New York. I lived in Chicago for 7 years.
Oh, cool.
And Chicago is an amazing Gilded Age city, with Wrigley. And I mean, there's just so much Gilded Age, the Palmer House, there's so much Gilded Age history there. So for me, it has always been about, the big cities in the US. I mean, I don't have I don't have an affinity or a connection to the UK. My family is mostly Italian on my dad's side. So that's like, they're the ones that came through Ellis Island. So that's sort of who I feel connected to. So, yeah, for me, it was Edith Wharton and sort of my own family history. And that's why I think I was so drawn to it. And it's really a fascinating time period in American history. It's sort of when America that we know now becomes America. Like we see the money, the technology, the corruption in politics, the formation of cities where everybody comes in off the farms and women start gaining their independence. And there's just, I mean, it's such a rich, fascinating, corrupt, problematic, era in our history that it just absolutely is fascinating to me.
That's awesome.
So there you go. But, I have had readers say to me, oh, when are you going to set something in the UK again? When are you going to do Regency again? And I was like, well, hopefully never. And I always say oh, I don't know. But, have you read the American based stuff? And they'll say, oh, I don't read anything set in America. And I've asked them, well, why? Yeah. And they say, because, the majority of the people that I ask say, because I can't romanticize American history like I can the British history, because I know American history. And I want to say, well, you really don't know American history. You think you know American history, but you don't. And I think that's why it's easier for us to lose ourselves in a, English set story, because we don't know their history and we don't know how the Dukes, we do know how the Dukes made their money, but nobody wants to sort of admit that. But so, I think in America, we're just so conditioned to think that we know American history forwards and backwards. And so it's boring and problematic. And it is, it's all of those things. But I think in the last maybe 5 years, there's really been this push to hear history from other points of view, which I think is really important. And I think we're learning we don't know history as well as we think we do. So that's always fun for me to find some, little historical nugget that maybe people don't know and that I can use in a book to try to highlight it.
Yeah.
So kind of a good segue from there. Something we talked a lot about in the group is that Regency books can often feel timeless. Like there's never a very specific place. They don't really engage with actual political history of the time, but your books feel incredibly different and distinctly tied to the year they're set from the places and people they meet. So what are the positives and negatives of this and writing it for you?
That's interesting. I've never thought of that. I do really try to, as part of the world building, to really give, like with Magnate, there was that huge snowstorm in 1888. And that's like, yeah. So like that, how can you not use that in a book?
Yes.
It's like, we're snowed in.
The best trope.
The perfect plot point for a romance novel. So I was like, okay, I definitely have to use that. It's interesting because when I did the How the Duke Stole Christmas anthology with Sarah and Sophie and Tessa Dare, one of the reviews actually said the last author, who was me, who was writing a Gilded Age set story, doesn't know the Regency at all. I was like, oh, okay. Actually wasn't wrong time, wrong place.
Yep.
But, so I feel like that's why I try to do it, because I want people to really know that it's different. But so much of what we love about the Regency, which is like the clothing, the ballrooms, the social hierarchy, all of that stuff is in the money. That's all in the Gilded Age too. So I have to try and set it apart, but also keep it familiar. So I don't know that I always get it right, but that's sort of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I can see that. And I feel like even the covers themselves feel very distinct and feel very different from Regency covers. So for this series in particular, I'm curious if you were involved at all in the cover design process, or if the publisher kind of just took it in what direction they wanted to kind of set it apart.
Okay, let's get into it.
Yes.
Okay, here's what happened with the covers.
Okay.
So for my first series, which was Regency set, they were all ballroom. It was woman in fabulous dress cover, single woman, fabulous dress, and they were gorgeous. Yeah. So then we start, and I sell the Gilded Age series, and J.R. Ward had just released a book, and I can't remember the title of it. It was not, a Black Daggerhood book. But it was a single guy on the cover, and it had like a kind of a cityscape at the bottom. Okay. And he just looked like really powerful and like sexy. And I was like, that is exactly the feel that I want for these like four guys. And so, so I came to Kensington and I said, this is what I'm thinking. And they really liked the idea. And so they did, Tycoon was kind of as an anomaly because it was ebook only. So, nobody sort of knew. I mean, you can't really use that as like any barometer as far as how well that cover idea did. But when it came time to sell Magnate to the booksellers were like, we don't get it. Like, what is this? Like, is it a romance? Is it like like what is happening? So the orders for Magnate weren't great. Like the initial sales weren't great. It was it got good reviews and it got good buzz, but it very much landed kind of with a confused thud. So then we had already designed the Baron cover, which I have the original Baron cover, and it's very much in the same vein. It's Will sitting in a chair with like a glass of, bourbon or whatever, and it's just him.
Would have loved that.
I love it too. I love it too. And it's him like in a chair with a glass of bourbon. He's like relaxed and looking all powerful and sexy. And sales came back and said, we got to change it. Like, no one thinks it's romance, and everybody thinks these covers are too dark.
Oh,
so for Baron, they added the woman, and made it like a little bit of a clinch. And I was like, okay, I could live with that. And you see Washington Square Park there at the bottom, the arch at the bottom, because that's where Will lives. So, that one, the pre-sales were a little bit better, but not. Like it wasn't gaining momentum. And so the publisher came back and said, for the third book, like, we have to go in just a completely different direction. Like, everyone's telling us these covers are too dark and they don't look like romance. And this is what you're getting. And so I got the cover for Mogul, which I don't think is any secret. I've talked about it quite publicly that I do not like it. It is not what I wanted. But it was what it was. I mean, the publisher, in their defense, was like, look, these books are not like, we're not hitting the mark. Like, we got to try something totally radically different. And I was like, yeah, but the heroine's blonde. So can we maybe color, maybe color her hair? And they were like, no. So that was a little disappointing.
It's frustrating.
Very frustrating. But I get where they're coming from. And as an author, yes, you want a cover that people are going to go, okay, it's I get it. It's a romance, what do they say? A cover should tell a story or ask a question. There's that whole and blue is supposed to be the color that sells the best. So, so I was fine. I had to live with it, but I don't, that's the one that I like the least.
Yeah.
So.
And that's so hard too, because I think authors have to deal with flack about their covers. And so Dana and I both work in publishing, so we kind of know the ins and outs of the design process, but a lot of readers aren't aware. So they'll be like, Joanna, she's a blonde. Why did you do this? And it's not your decision at all.
Weren't you aware she's blonde? I'm I get it. Believe me. Yeah, I mean, but I know where they're coming from, and they were, when the series originally even sold, I think my editor went out on Twitter and said, listen, if I were to tell you guys, this is a Gilded Age, if I were to try to say Gilded Age romance, would you know what time period I'm talking about? So there was just a lot of what is this? When is it? What are you trying to do? We don't get it, which, I mean, not from the publisher standpoint so much, but the readers and the booksellers, they just were what is this? What is this thing you're trying to give us? So, but for me, that was the whole reason I wrote the Regency series in the first place. I wrote the Regency series intending to always move to the Gilded Age, but I knew that I could never shop a Gilded. You could never shop a Gilded Age series and have a publisher be sure, no one else is doing this, but we want it.
You're the first.
So I wrote the Regency series in the hopes that I would land at a publisher that would then be willing to take a risk on a Gilded Age series. And I was fortunate enough that I did. And so I always appreciated that they were willing to take a risk on the Gilded Age, even though nobody had no idea, didn't have a clue what it was. And that they were really actively trying to figure out how to market it in order to sell it. So that's the story of.
Yeah. I feel like I look at these covers in a whole different way now, because you can see that arc across them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really wanted that single, guy, and in retrospect, that's on me. That's my mistake. I mean, I thought, I had single ladies on the first covers. Why can't I have single dudes on the covers? I just was thinking and in retrospect, that's just my naivete, my, hubris, my whatever of not knowing really how the romance market works and markets itself and what readers are looking for. I just, I oftentimes go by what I like, and, but what I like is not always what sells. I mean, that's just, there is a whole, I mean, you guys know, there's a lot of thinking that goes into what sells for romance. And so, in retrospect, they would have looked much different, but it is what it is.
fun little kind of segue. We do cover voting. We did it with Sarah McLean, and now we do it with your series, all of your books. So would you want to know which of your covers, the Knicker Babes, was their favorite?
Out of like all like 15?
All of them.
Oh God. Is it Rogue of Fifth Avenue?
Yes, it was.
How did you
I
get
love this one the most.
I'll just swing this around to, can you see my wall?
Oh my God. That's
your favorite
amazing.
I've got a giant, huge poster of Rogue of Fifth Avenue on my wall.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's John Paul Ferreira did that one.
It's a great cover.
Yeah, I love it. So, yay.
And then of this series, Tycoon was actually the one that made it the farthest. People love Tycoon. So,
Really?
yeah.
Good.
Right?
Yay.
The single hero did it for the group.
That's surprising. Meaning, like, that's the book that people like the best?
It made
Of
it
the
the
Knickerbocker
farthest
series,
of the
yeah.
Knickerbocker in our brackets.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That was actually written, they didn't really want that book, and I was like,
Oh, really?
you have to take it. And like, it's a group of 4 guys. Like,
Yes.
that 4th story has to end up somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
because I just thought 3 was like too, like, I really wanted 4. I wanted finance, railroads, steel, and newspaper.
Interesting.
And because I thought like 3, it just didn't, I don't know. So I kind of wrote that novella as like a way, it was really kind of a throwaway, and it was just really to intro the series.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time on it. My agent was like, you need to wrap that up. You've got a lot of books to write, and you're spending a lot of time on this novella. And I was like, yeah, but I really, like, it launches the series. I really want it to be right. So anyway, but good.
Right. Well, and I think too, that's maybe because novellas, I think, are very tricky to write. And as a writer, how do you kind of decide like which characters get that full length treatment and which ones are better suited to a novella format?
Oh boy. That's hard. Why did I just decide on, I think the other ones I had so fleshed out in my mind, and Ted, I didn't.
Yeah.
And he, on the surface, felt the simplest. Like, he's from Ohio. He's kind of like a farm boy who like is good with numbers and like comes to the big city and like makes a lot of money. Like, it just felt like
A nice little cinnamon roll.
exactly. So it just felt like, yeah, like, and I don't know if I made him that way. Like, you know what, if which came first, the chicken or the egg with him, but like, it just became like, I think easier because I already had the other ones fleshed out in my mind. Yeah. So
I see that.
We all really loved Clara. She's dynamite.
She was really fun to write. I don't think I've ever, I think she's probably unique in all of my heroines. I don't think I've ever written anybody like her. She was really fun to write. So,
so our next question comes from Katie in our group. So in the series, right, the boys are all tied together because they're part of this like Knickerbocker Club, and they're sort of friends. There's some kind of like frenemies vibes between them. But there's never kind of an exploration of how the 4 came together, their origin story. Do you kind of have your own headcanon for how that happened? Or are you just like, this is it, they're just together at this point?
It's a very good question, Katie. It was Katie? That was a good question. I don't know that I've ever really tried to sit down and think about it, about how they came together. It seemed, yeah, like I said, picking the 4 sort of, areas that they excelled at was easy. and this actually was a thing in the Gilded Age. I mean, there's plenty of articles and books and stuff that talk about, you know, J.P. Morgan, you know, always having dinner with, you know, blah blah blah, and swapping, you know, they're swapping things back and forth. I mean, there are no laws. There's no like antitrust or like collusion, or I mean, it's like just a free for all. So it just it made sense for me to pull 4 of these guys together because they're all sort of titans in their own area, and you need like one hand to wash the other in these days. Like you want, like, you know, to have a newspaper guy that you can call up and be like, yeah, I've got a strike brewing in wherever, and I've got to, you know, okay. No, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know that I've ever really sat to think about it before. I mean, I feel like at one point I say who pulls the 4 of them together, and I think it was Will, but I could be wrong. I just feel like it just felt like it was a real thing that happened back then, and so but I never thought about who called up who and was like, hey, like,
do this.
yeah, like you want to like get in on this action. Yeah, I don't know.
That's funny.
Maybe there's like a prequel story waiting somewhere in there.
So one of the things I loved reading about this is that because I've grown up around the city, is that I like know those locations so well, especially like 41 Park Row where Cabot is on Printers Row. Like I graduated from Pace, so it's like really exciting to see Cabot there. Are there any special places for you that you really enjoyed writing or would love to write soon in the future?
Let's see. I always delve into like the history of wherever sort of people are living or people are set. Like I know a lot about like Fifth Avenue and how Fifth Avenue became Fifth Avenue, and you know, Washington Square Park used to be a graveyard, and I mean, I always try like wherever people are sort of set to research that section of town. So I feel like I'm losing the thread of the question. I do try to pick different area. Like in Barron, I use a lot of Union Square, like the Tenderloin area. You know, Devil of Downtown is a lot of the Bowery. Prince of Broadway is like a lot of sort of Madison's, what we know is like Madison Square Park area. For A Scandalous Deal, it was really cool to research Madison Square Garden and all the iterations of Madison Square Garden that have happened over like the years. And the one that I use is the one that Stanford White, you know, built that was that we no longer have today, but and was where he was shot actually and killed. So, you know, Mogul was a lot of researching Chinatown, which was really fascinating. So I like that part though. I mean, I like discovering bits and pieces of the city. And you know, I sort of like, it's fun to see the buildings that are still there, the buildings that are gone, you know, so, yeah, I like that part.
It is great. We kind of felt like as readers while going through this series that it was very much a writer who was like, you know, testing their limits and stretching their legs, really unafraid to try new things like archetypes or plots or tropes. And I was curious about what you feel like your evolution as an author was throughout this series, and if you felt that way during the writing process.
I think that Barron was the easiest to write of the stories. Like I said, I labored over Tycoon because it was short. It launched the series. I really felt like, I think it's the first novella. It's the first novella I'd ever written. So for me, like a lot of that was like pacing and is it too long? Trying to cut where you can, punch where you can, pull back where you can. That I spent a lot of time on Tycoon. Magnate was difficult for, a lot of reasons. Again, like me trying to get it right, and not trusting, I think, probably my instincts when when I should have. And so there were a lot of versions of it. It went through a lot of beta readers. Baron, I wrote really fast, and that's very close to what my draft, like that book, very close. Mogul was a struggle for me, and I think it shows in the book. I tried for a big swing, dealing with the Chinese Exclusionary Act. I'm not sure I got it 100% right. I probably there were a lot of things I would do different if I were to rewrite it now. It went through a lot of beta readers. One of my friends who reads all of my stuff is Chinese, and so it spent a lot of time with like her and her family, because I wanted to like make sure that I got like the language right, and again, like that book was written when the others weren't selling well. So as a writer, that sinks into your head, because, you've got your publisher now saying, we're changing things up. Like, we got to change the look of the series. Like, and, I'm checking the sales for like Magnate and Baron. And it's like, I'm like, oh my God, have I made the biggest mistake of my life? Like, is anybody ever going to want to read books set in the Gilded Age? I mean, it was very, it was a time of a lot of self-doubt. Like, I really thought like, okay, I got to go back. Like, I got to go back to the Regency. Like, nobody wants these books. So Mogul was a struggle for many, many, many reasons. And so does that answer the question?
It does. I mean, it's wild, because I feel like these books read like an author who's having so much fun.
Yes. I mean, listen, that series is like the series of my heart. Like, when I was, when I got into the game, it was always with the intention of switching to the Gilded Age, and like, this is what I wanted. Like, I wanted a steel guy, a finance guy, a railroad guy. And like, I mean, so it definitely like very much is like, straight out of, my brain. Like, I had a blast. I mean, Magnate and Baron were a lot of fun to write. Tycoon was a lot of fun to write. I mean, it's challenging, but fun. I mean, Emmett is probably my favorite hero.
Wow, really?
Like, mine personally.
Yeah.
Like, and it's funny because, he's like a love it or leave it kind of hero for a lot of people, but he's my, like, that is my, like, my id, like right out of my brain. So I did have a lot of fun, but it was like, am I the only one having fun? Like, like, you write them and they're so much fun to write, and then you're like, oh, I'm not sure anybody's reading these. Like, maybe it's not so fun. So I think that's where I was by the end of the series.
Okay.
And then, when I came out of the series, I had thought I would probably have to go back to Regency. And then I met my editor from Avon at RWA, who was like, wow, I really love your Knickerbocker series. And, I think the time is right to like really like launch the Gilded Age as like, like a real time period. Like, I think you've done it really well. And I was like, well,
that's amazing.
Maybe you'd be interested in some Gilded Age. So yeah, I got, fortunate in that, I guess enough eyeballs got on the Knickerbocker Club series that I was able to keep going.
That's awesome.
But I do feel like I got, I think every writer will tell you that, over the course of our writing career. Like you learn, you get better, you try to get better at the craft. You know, I mean, at least I do. Like I always try to be more critical with myself. I always try to push, you know, and if it's something that I think I can't do, like I try to think about how I might be able to do it. You know, I always want to like be excited about what I'm writing and push forward and make it, give the reader, my goal is always to give the reader something they haven't read before.
Yeah.
That's always what I hope for.
Which is definitely happening here.
Well, good.
A burning question from the Knicker Babes. So in a lot of romance series, like past books feature small side characters, supporting characters who will often come back in later books. And there were definitely many that we loved from the series, Small People. So B in her books on Twitter and Instagram, she dubbed these background characters as background bays. So these are characters who never get their HEA. So there were so many in the Knickerbocker Club. Two of them being Kelly, Emmett's boxer friend, Cora, Lily's lockpicking cousin. There was also Emmett's brother, Brendan. So many. They would love to know if you ever envisioned stories for them when you were writing the series.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. Not Kelly. That's an interesting comment.
Tragedy.
Kelly's a fave.
Kelly's a big fave.
I love it. I had no idea that people liked Kelly so much. I definitely had planned on the next series. Cora was going to have her own story, and because I switched publishers, I'll never be able to do it. So what I did with Cora is I actually wrote a short story called The Knickerbocker Bride, which is Cora, and I posted it. It's on Wattpad, and it's also on I don't know, you can't really find it on my website. I'm trying to think where I've posted it. I know I've posted it like in my Facebook reader group.
Okay.
And I'll post it again on Facebook.
Awesome.
You know, it's short, but she was a fascinating character, and I love that she was in love with this guy who had no idea who she was. And so that was fun to do. So the Cora, I did do a story for, just a fun freebie. And Brendan, I know Brendan will never get a story. It's sad.
It is sad.
He was a sweetie pie.
He's an angel.
I just saw an inside joke from the group passing through. This is just kind of a quick thing. Everyone was always waiting for a desk sex scene, and it didn't happen fully on page. So this joke occurred of our background bays and a desk sex scene would be a dream of ours.
There's no desk sex at all?
There's like
in Mogul?
Yeah.
Is there one in Mogul?
It like fades away.
Oh,
he like puts her on the desk and then it goes away. And we're like, no.
That's shocking. I don't do closed door.
Right?
I like the open door, but that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
It's what the readers want.
Now, in that case, there is sex on a dressing table.
Yes, there is.
Does that count? That's like kind of a
right. We're halfway there.
Right.
So this next question comes from Elizabeth, who wanted to know if you feel like your expectations and readers' expectations of heroes and heroines have changed since you started writing, and then how you as an author keep up with that.
It's hard. Yes, for sure. And rightfully so. I mean, I do feel like readers are harder on the heroines. Mm-hmm. And I have always sort of, I mean, Catnip for me is an asshole hero. Like, love it. Love it. Like the more of a jerk he is, like, I'm there. Like, I love it. Like, that totally works for me. So that's why Emmett, right? So that's why you get Emmett. but that can be a hard sell if there's not enough grovel at the end. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot of the criticism. And I do try to learn from the review, the criticism of my books. Like I am thin-skinned, but I try to, you have to look for patterns, right? So I will like a one-off or like a, 2-off, I might not pay attention to, but if I get like 10 reviews that are like, listen, this grovel was just, crap, like he didn't grovel enough. Like, so that kind of stuff, like, does stick with me and forces me to, okay, I have to do better in the next book. And Magnate is one of those where a lot of the reviews said like the grovel is just not enough. And so in Baron, I was like, okay, I got to really like up the grovel because the grovel in Magnate was not enough. And in subsequent books, like I think I did try to really think about the grovel and the hero's sort of arc as well as the heroine, because sometimes I think I'm trying so hard to get the heroine right because I know readers are going to be really invested in her, and they can be harder on the heroine, and so I do spend a lot of time on her, and sometimes I just like the hero is just like a jerk and I love him, and I don't know whether he has like any kind of
you're like, you're perfect, baby, don't apologize.
Totally perfect.
And
so I sort of forget about his arc. So that for me has been something I have to pay attention to. Yeah. So also, like, I will say that another thing that I write so fast, what I write is like 95%. What I turn into my editors, like usually 90% of what ends up on the page.
Oh, wow.
It comes out very sort of fully formed and clean. But what I have to do is, because I have a journalism background, and it's very much like what, when, why, where, let's go, sex, bam, kiss, like move, put in beats and breaths and let it simmer, because that doesn't come naturally to me. And that's something that I learned, along the way, where I just I rushed it and I didn't let it get emotional, and I kept it, bam, bam, bam. So that for me is something I've had to learn.
Very cool.
I think we will switch to lightning round questions for a bit, and then we'll be taking questions from the people watching. So think of them now and get them ready. So Kelly, you want to start us off with the first lightning round?
So rapid fire, Joanna. You are quarantined with one of your couples. Any series, what couple?
Oh my goodness gracious. I'm quarantined?
Quarantined. It's a 2020 question.
I think it would have to be Clay and Florence from The Prince of Broadway, just because we'd probably be at a casino at that point, or like a club.
A good place to be, like, locked up.
There would be plenty to do.
Right.
So, and I think they would, she'd be a good time. So.
Oh yeah. I feel like it would be a disservice to be in her books if we didn't do one Fuck Yeah Florence within this live. So there it is. Hope everyone's happy. Which of your couples throws the best holiday parties?
Which of the couples throws the best holiday parties? Oh, that's hard. What holiday? Does it matter? Does it matter?
Any holiday.
Or heart.
Arbor Day? Probably Mamie and Frank from The Rogue of Fifth Avenue, because sort of anything goes, and Frank's got that house with like the moat around it. So, which was based on a real house, by the way, in New York City in the Gilded Age. So yeah, probably that would be like a really fun, like if he put swans in the moat, that would be really fun.
Right.
Or it could be at Clayton's and we could have a holiday bowling.
Yes. Yeah.
If you could collaborate with another author, who would it be and what genre would you want to write?
If I could collaborate with another author, what genre? You know what? I would like to collaborate with Ruby Dixon and do
Oh my God.
an Ice Planet Barbarian, like,
Yes.
I don't know. Yes. Like,
You would buy it. We'd buy it.
yeah. Some sort of like crazy, like they land in New York City. I don't know. Yes. I would love to, like do, and Sophie Jordan and I have talked about this at various points when we're together, like how much because we read all of those like crazy bananas sci-fi. We love those sci-fi books, like the Prison Planet books and Ice Planet Barbarian.
Oh yeah, it's been like my 2020 read.
Your what?
It's been like my 2020, the Ice Planet Barbarians. Like I just read Ruby's Shifter novellas. Didn't know she had those. Like
I haven't read those either.
They're wild. They're typical Ruby.
Have you read Robin Lovett's Sex Planet books?
No, not yet. That's on my list.
Are really good. So we read all those books. So we talk all the time. Like, oh, I would love to just write like just a crazy sci-fi, you know. I don't know what, but that would be what I would love to do.
I'm delighted by this answer. I literally said to Dana like 2 days ago that I like wish that you would try paranormal.
Oh, really?
Especially coming off of Mogul, which has such a roller coaster of a beginning. I was like, just imagine what Joanna would do with paranormal. Like,
oh my God. And that brings it to Baron with with the whole ghost thing. I was through the whole book being like, I bet you there's an actual ghost going on here. He is haunted by the metaphor of his father. It was a whole idea. I was Ghost Watch. I was here for it. And then there was no real ghost. I was very let down. It could have been the spooky time October reading, but
well,
I want the ghost.
I'm very sorry that there didn't put a ghost in there. But yeah, I mean, you know, of course, like she's a charlatan. Like there's, you know, all of those mediums back then were just like charlatans. So there was no ghost.
Next lightning round question. We know you have an anthology coming out very, very soon. So your dream anthology, obviously besides The Duke I'd Like to F, would be based around which trope? So if you could write like another one, which trope would it be?
I have to tell you, I had a lot of fun writing the story for this one. It probably would be like another really sexy, like, again, the story that is in this anthology is like plucked from my brain, like right onto I mean, it is like my catnip. So it probably would be like a super sexy, either paranormal or contemporary story.
Perfect.
Yeah.
This lightning round question comes from Sharon. Is what event from the Gilded Age have you not written about that you want to write about?
People keep asking me to write about Newport, so I did for the Heiress Hunt. So I wrote for the Heiress Hunt, half set in Newport. What event? There's a lot of financial crashes. Like there's a big financial crash that happens in 1893.
That'd be interesting.
Here's my real answer, though. Now that I've had a second to think about it, baseball.
Oh yeah,
Gilded Age baseball.
That'd be great.
Which I wanted to do, and you know, they weren't sure anybody would buy a Gilded Age sports series, but the formation of baseball in the late 19th century, which was also played by women, is fascinating. And it really becomes a business as the century wears on, so that when we roll into the 20th century, it's all men, it's big business, it's, you know, it's the teams that we sort of now know. But before that, it was very loosey-goosey, and there are women playing, And it's a lot of barnstorming teams, just like going around the country, and it's fascinating the evolution of how baseball becomes like this big business.
Yeah, we'd read it.
Well, maybe someday.
So the next one comes from B in her books, and she wants to know if you could go on a research trip anywhere, where would you go?
Newport. Yeah, and can I stay in the breakers?
Yes.
Like, will they let me? Like,
It's your fantasy research trip.
Yeah. I mean, I want to stay. I want to like sleep in one of the houses is what I want to do. That would be my fantasy. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. This lightning round section is this or that. Would you rather be a newspaper reporter or a medium?
I went to journalism school, so newspaper reporter. And I could never be a medium with a straight face. I mean, never.
Takes a lot of skill.
Yeah, no. I could never, flim-flam people and like pretend I'm, seeing stuff when I'm not. And yeah, that would never work for me.
Would you rather travel by carriage or by train car?
Oh, train car for sure. For sure. Have you guys seen the videos of like the Orient Express and stuff? Oh my God. Please.
Beverly Jenkins just shared a really great one.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, train car for sure. For sure.
Would you rather be snowed in with Elizabeth and Emmett or trapped in a train car with Clara and Ted?
I would rather be in the train car. My husband will tell you that I do not deal with disasters well. We had a blackout in New York City when we were still living in the city, and I don't remember what year it was, but I feel like it was like 2000 and anybody remember, like 2008, 2006? I don't know. And I mean, I almost lost my mind. It was like we had 28 hours without electricity, and I was like ready to like go crawl down in the manhole myself. I mean, I don't do well in disasters. And we had Hurricane Sandy here in New Jersey, where we were, we had no power for 14 days.
Yeah, same here.
Things got real grim in my house. So.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of Scrabble being played. So if you could have dinner in Chinatown with Lillian and Calvin, or go to a seance with Ava and Will.
I have never been to a seance. That would be like real fun. I mean, yeah. I did a lot of research into, the spiritualism of the time. And they did a lot of crazy things, like with phosphorus and knocking on the tables and having stuff set up in the walls and stuff. That would be really cool.
That would be awesome. Would you rather drink champagne or gin?
Oh, champagne. A gin. Nice. I am not a gin drinker. No, too floral for me.
I see that.
Perfumey.
And then the final one, would you rather spend the weekend in Chicago or Newport?
That is actually a hard question because I have so many friends in Chicago that Chicago is a blast. I love hanging out in Chicago, and I don't get to go back as much as I'd like. So that's a hard question. I probably would say Chicago.
There you go.
Okay, everyone. So it's time for you guys to take over and ask all of your questions for Joanna. So if you've had some in the past, please repeat them and put them in the chat, and I'll bring them on the screen for Joanna. Ooh, this first one is really great. I think it's definitely inspired by Fated Mates. So what are the books that blooded you, Joanna?
All right. Here we go.
We're reaching.
Oh, they're coming.
They're coming. All right. So if you want to talk about the Gilded Age book that blooded me, this is it right here. And I reread it probably once a year. It's called Lions and Lace by Megan McKinney. It is, she is a socialite. He is a Wall Street financier whose nickname is the Predator. And he ruins her family. He like through some stock manipulation, like causes her family's ruin. So her uncle takes her to the hero's house and like chains her to the railing outside the house and is like, well, he took all of our money. He can now have you because I can't marry you off anymore. And so the hero brings her in and is like, what the hell do I want with you? Like, why are you, and then like he realizes, oh, like I have this younger sister who society doesn't accept because they're Irish.
Okay.
So society doesn't accept his younger sister that he needs to marry off. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna marry this woman, and she can then debut my sister in society. So it's like enemies to lovers. It's like marriage of convenience. It's like a whole hero. All of it right there. So and listen, Megan McKinney's real problematic. She had a little legal issue after Hurricane Katrina. So
oh no,
I really do love this book. That is a book that definitely, I read it. It came out in 92, I think, 1992. And I read it when it came out. And I was like, I mean, that for me was like, oh my God, this is the kind of book I want to write. And so that has always been in my mind as like, if I could ever write, Gilded Age, like it's, that would be it. So that was a big one for me. But I grew up like on, Johanna Lindsay and Julie Garwood. I think Gentle Rogue is a book that sticks out in my mind. Mistress by Amanda Quick sticks out in my mind. I mean, those were just books that like, A Prisoner of My Desire by Johanna Lindsay, which I've talked about many times. I mean, is like, that's like real early Joanna. Like, she chains him to a bed. He chains her to a bed. Like that's like real right up here.
Why were chains so popular in these early romances?
And I mean, I just loved it. Like I just ate it up with a spoon. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I just loved it. So
that's a lot of fun.
This next one comes from Sophie, preemptively asking for novella recommendations as we head into Novella November.
That's exciting. Novella November. I do. Do you want me to give them now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fire away.
Okay. So I had to like think quickly because and for some reason, like I was drawing like a blank on really good novellas. But so Tessa Dare writes really good novellas. Alyssa Cole writes really good novellas. Carolyn Linden writes really good novellas. Sarah MacLean writes, which we now know, writes really, really good novellas. I love the novella that she wrote in the Naughty Brits anthology, and I love the one that she wrote in How the Duke Stole Christmas.
Wow, yeah.
So Sierra Simone also writes really good novellas. She wrote for the Australia, it's an Australia anthology to like raise money for the wildfires in Australia. And it's got, I don't know, like 30 authors in it. And her story is a vampire story. And he is so, I need a full length story with this vampire hero like yesterday. I mean, he is so funny and like so just, he answers the door and he's, the other hero, it's a male. The other hero wakes him up and the vampire's like, listen, if you're here to, kill me, you're just gonna have to come back later. Like I'm tired and sleeping. I mean, it's hilarious and like sexy and funny and like that has stuck in my mind. And I keep telling her, please write more vampire stories because I loved it. And the other one that I really liked that I read, I think within the last year, was Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy have this hockey series. It's a male hockey series called Him. And they did a novella like that catches up with the couple like years, like a year or so later. And it's called Epic. And I enjoyed that too. So I don't know. Is that enough?
Those are great.
Yeah. I'm sure I could come up with more.
This next one comes from Elizabeth. So what is a trope you love and a trope you hate?
Secret Baby does not do it for me. I know a lot of people love it, but I don't think I'd ever write it. And I don't love to read it. LaQuette wrote one of the only secret baby stories I think that I have really enjoyed, called Lies You Tell. But the hero's like, it's a mob story too, which of course is like Joanna's catnip. So I of course loved it because it's LaQuette and it's also the mob. But so that was a good secret baby story that I liked, but that's generally not, I would not pick that up.
Yeah.
Enemies to Lovers is my jam. Like that, I mean, like I said, the more of an asshole the hero is, like, I'm sold. So yeah, Enemies to Lovers is probably one that if I read if I read the description and that's what it is, I usually
it's like one click. I'm there.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Right. I think we probably have time for one more. If there's any more. If not,
I don't see any other.
Okay. Then Joanna, do you want to tell us about the 2 releases you have coming up?
Oh yeah. Okay. So the DILF anthology. So like I was in quarantine and I'm like, one day I'm just like, somebody said something about DILF and I was like, yeah, like Duke I'd like to fuck. And then I was like, wait a minute. Has somebody written that? Like, does that exist? Because if it doesn't, like, I think I'm going to put my tent pole down and like claim it. And I looked on Amazon and sure enough, like nobody had ever written Duke I'd like to F. And I was like,
I don't know how.
Like, it just, that's to me like writes itself. So I actually went out to Zoe Archer, Eva Lee, and I said, what do you think? And she was like, I think it's hilarious. I think we should do it. And I'm in. And then it just came about like that we, Sierra and Adriana. So it's Sierra Simone, me, Eva Lee, Nicola Davidson, and Adriana Herrera. And we're all writing like super spicy Duke stories. Sierra and I both write like the sort of older man, younger woman. Eva writes the, older woman, younger Duke. So it's like everybody kind of put their own twist on the trope. And it's pretty hot. So, and that comes out November 17th.
It's very soon.
In both ebook and print. And then in March comes The Heiress Hunt, which is my next Gilded Age full-length book with Avon. And it is half in Newport and half in New York City. And it's basically The Bachelor in Newport. It's a guy who comes back from Paris who needs to get married, but he really is in love with his childhood best friend, and she is clueless and has no idea that he is in love with her. So from the jump, he's sort of maneuvering things to like get get near her so that he can woo her and win her. And then of course, things progress from there. But that's The Heiress Hunt, and that's out in March.
So excited.
And then the book that comes after is The Lady Gets Lucky. And I think that's October.
Oh my gosh. All right. So you have like a plethora of goodies coming.
I do. So
many things for the Knicker Babes to be excited for. We're also currently running a giveaway on our Instagram. Joanna's provided a copy of The Heiress Hunt, an advanced copy. So that's so exciting, especially hearing it pitched. And then both me and Kelly are giving away an ebook of Duke I'd Like to F. So very excited. Make sure you go enter.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Our Instagram handles should be below for that. I think we're running it until the 11th of November, so you still have lots of time. But otherwise, I think that is all the time we have for today. Thank you to everyone out there watching, all of our Knicker Babes. We love you.
Yes,
Joanna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys. This was so much fun and such a thrill. And I'm so glad you guys read the Knickerbocker Club and that you liked it. And I'm so honored. So thank you.
It was amazing. Joanna, I'm going to have you hang on while we cut the live off so we could say our final goodbyes to you. But to everyone else, good night.
Happy
read romance,
Halloween.
fight the patriarchy,
Happy Halloween.
go vote, happy Halloween, all that jazz.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Knicker Babes.